Well, you know what it was is that I was looking at things and it didn't feed my heart. It didn't feed my heart. And I didn't have a $150,000 job. I had just gotten married between the two of us. We had 3 kids and no money. It was not the time to leave. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want.
Ever feel trapped in a job you hated but needed to survive, or wake up one morning and realize you're not really doing what you want to do? My guest today will tell you how to take back control of your life. Constantino Delli, author of The Way, is here. And later in the show, Eileen McDargh, author of Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live, will join us. First up, Constantino Delli. Cost was working on Wall Street in New York, making $150,000 a year back in 1995, but he got burned out and depressed and decided to give it all up and pursue his passion. Great to have you here today, Cost.
Gregory, thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. So it sounds good from the outside, working on Wall Street, making good money. What happened?
Well, I had a good old-fashioned breakdown. It was just, I thought I was happy, you know, I had a great job, but I realized that I wasn't truly happy inside. And I hadn't really dealt with a lot of the issues that I had faced in my life, being a caretaker for my family and watching things that were not right with my family growing up. And I think all that stress and everyday anxieties really just took a toll on me.
So how long did you work in that particular, how long did it take for you to get to that position?
To reach that level of work, I was working for about 7, 8 years.
7, 8 years, okay.
Yeah.
And long hours, I imagine.
Long hours, and yeah, and it was just a lot of stress, and you know, and I wasn't really moving forward with my life and my career, and I wasn't really totally because of the career. It was because of a lot of other stuff that I had inside, personal stuff that I hadn't dealt with. So it's like almost sometimes your body has to like. It's unfortunate we'd let things go and not really deal with it, because that's why people have breakdowns. So luckily I was able to get back into it, you know, trying to rebuild myself, and that's what I did.
So, I mean, was there a particular moment though when you had kind of the awakening, or what exactly?
It was just one thing that led to another. I was let go out of a job, and I found myself 2 o'clock in the morning in my apartment. I was just in tears. And I think looking back, because I started writing, you know, I was keeping a journal at the time, and I realized that I wasn't happy the way I was raised in some aspects of it. I didn't realize that my father was very abusive with my mom. And just those things just kept coming back to me of why I was, you know, acting certain ways, you know, why I became a very big caretaker for my mother, because I felt sorry for her. So all those things are just layers and anxieties that we build in our lives, and if we don't deal with them, you can't really truly be passionate and be at your best in what you're doing. So
what did you do? I mean, you said it was 2 a.m. and you're sitting there, what?
Well, the first thing I did was, you know, I moved out of New York City because it was just too much for me. And I went back to my home in New Jersey, and I just started rebuilding myself by starting writing again, because it's something I always did in my life. And then I stopped for a period of time. And I started.
And I'm sorry. So did you quit the job, or you were let go, or what happened?
I was let go, actually.
Okay.
So it was, you know, getting let go of a job that's making $150,000 is pretty, you know, it's a crisis, right?
So that was the point though where you said, well, you know what, I don't even want to continue doing this anyway.
I was like, you know, this is like, there's something wrong with my life, because I'm not really like this. So that was a turning point. But what I started doing was just taking better care of myself and looking at my relationships. And I realized that I had relationships that were not really healthy, friends that were just draining you, and the girl that I had at the time was draining me. I found myself being drained everywhere. So I started, you know, disassociating myself from those people. And by writing and keeping a journal, I started realizing that some of the thoughts that I have in my head was something wrong with me. And one of the things I write in my book is if you read a poem that I wrote during that time, and it talks about how I was chained up in the dungeon that I was, you know, and buried, and I wanted to get out.
Chained up on Wall Street.
Yeah, chained up on Wall Street, and I wanted to come out. And it took a long time to really deal with that. And unless we're faced with something on paper that says, I am not happy, and that really helped me, because I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is in my head. This is how I feel. So I had the courage to, you know, it took a while, but it helped me to realize that I need to make a change.
And so when you were staying then with family for a while, you said?
My home in New Jersey, yeah.
Okay.
With my mom, yeah.
So you decided not to continue though in that line of work, right? I mean, you didn't just start sending out your resume looking for another job.
Well, I started it took like 2-3 months just to cleanse myself, if you will, just heal and just write, and then but one thing led to another. I started taking started sending out my headshot for acting, and that went into commercial. I started doing commercials, and I was starting doing more artistic, creative things.
And you had done acting when you were a kid anyway? Or?
Well, I was always a performer for my family when I was growing up in Italy, but I never really took up acting because my father didn't think it was the right thing. My father was an old-fashioned Italian guy. I was like, you don't act, you got to get a real job.
Go work on Wall Street.
Right, go work on Wall Street, make a ton of money, thinking that that's going to bring you happiness. So I've always been a performer for my family. I never really pursued that. So once I started doing some commercials, some TVs, I really realized this is what I like to do,
Were you making a living doing it at that point?
I wasn't making a living, but then once I started writing and building back myself, I started going back on Wall Street as a consultant. So that's where I started my consulting practice.
But it was probably different going back more as an entrepreneur.
It was more of an entrepreneur, right, exactly. And more I had reconnected with my true self inside. And that's what really the whole process in what I do now, the workshops that I do both in business and individuals, and it's what I outline in the book, is about how you can live from your creative optimum self. How you can really be happy not only in your work, but in your overall well-being, in your financials, and your relationships.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because you're able to take the corporate background
right.
and not really, I mean, even though in a sense you walked away from it, but yet you were able to use it in a different way that made more sense for you and, and make a living from it,
right.
but yet not feel that you were, just part of the corporate grind or something.
Exactly, and that's what I do with my clients that I have now on the business side. I mean, I can bring a lot of value because I bring a lot of experience, but I also incorporate the personal aspects of living your greatest self every day, and that's what I talk about, is that people are productive at work when they're happy with themselves.
And you're still pursuing the acting and...
Well, I do a little bit here and there. I don't have that much time, but I'm more really passionate about...
so this is really your mission now, the way?
It is my mission, is the way, yes. Because
so what is the way? I know you have your 5 steps, 10 steps, 5 inner and 5 outer?
Yeah, the way is it's non-religious, non-political, but it's based on the fact that every one of us has the potential to be happy, or has the potential to be good at what they're doing, potential of
good to be.
Yeah, being productive, of making a good living. And the reason that we don't do that all the time is we disconnect with ourselves, or we disconnect with our inner wisdom, or what I call creative optimum self. So the way is set up 5 inner steps and 5 outer steps. They're very simple, they're not a secret, they're not expensive, and they're very practical. And if we incorporate them on a daily basis, each day, not only will you see a positive change with yourself, but also you will inspire others around you and see a positive change all around you.
Well, since they're not secret, can you tell us what a few of them are? I think
sure.
Journaling is one.
Journaling is the first one. It's not about keeping a journal as maybe as a kid as what you did, but really it's about writing things down, how you feel at a certain point in time. And if you journal in the morning or in the evening, it just cleanses and it just puts things in perspective. So, because we use writing in status reports or emails every day, and it's good to have it
kind of your own personal status
report of how you're feeling, so you can take action. Another one is the overall well-being, eating the foods and realizing that your body is a very intelligent being that knows what it needs. We just have to listen to it. Now, if you have a lot of negative thoughts, you can't listen to your body because there's a lot of clutter in the way. So as you start incorporating these few steps, you start feeling better about yourself, you start have more energy and can relate to people and really can connect. And then the 5 outer steps are really based on the business success that I've had, and there are 5 principles. For example, in business, if you run a multi-billion-dollar program or a project, you want to leverage what's good and be efficient.
Sure.
So I take that principle, and the first outer step is how to live with no loose ends. Which means, if you make a promise that you're going to say or do something that's positive in nature, and you don't follow through, you have a loose end. Now, what does that do? Well, you're always thinking about it. I should have called Gregory, or I should have paid the bill. And if you don't follow through, it's something that it clutters your mind. And if it clutters your mind, you cannot live in the moment. And if you can't live in the moment, you're missing out on something
I was
good.
thinking of you this week because of that, because I believe in making lists, by the way. I interviewed somebody before who talked about making lists, but I liked your idea because it was really not even just, it was just everything. Make a list of everything, the loose ends that you have to take care of. And one of the things, and I got most of the stuff done this week, but I was trying to get a haircut, and I couldn't get it in. I have to get it tomorrow. But
that looks great.
So my loose end was getting the haircut, but I thought of you though. I thought, just get out there, get everything done, and.
Wish I had a pair of scissors.
Yeah, that'll be the makeover show. That's the next show.
Right.
That's why I didn't cut it. We could use everything around here.
No, but it's very, and it has a domino effect. If you make an appointment at a restaurant and it's Valentine's night, for example, and everybody wants to get in, and you got in, and you're lucky to get in, but you change your mind and you don't cancel. Just think what it could happen. People making less money because you're not there, and maybe that there was another couple that wanted to get in, they couldn't get in because you can't make.
I wonder what percentage of people actually call and cancel the restaurant reservation.
Yeah, that's good.
Probably.
Yeah.
The restaurant industry will love you if people actually.
Actually, I try to do as much as I can, but sometimes I also don't follow through on some things. But I'm getting better at it.
All right. Well, Constantino Delli, the book is The Way. We will be right back. And we are back. Joining me now is Eileen McDargh, author of Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live. Welcome back today, Eileen.
Thanks.
Great to see you. So you're working on Wall Street, making good money, and you wake up one day and you're not happy, or really in any position. What do you do? I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I wasn't on Wall Street, but I have to tell you, when I first wrote this book, it was following myself in process. I had a job as a PR executive, handling mostly multinational accounts, and I got to the place, Greg.
Making all the bad stuff good.
That's right. Making all the, doing all the whitewash stuff. But, I got to the place where if I wrote another press release, I was going to throw up. And
I hear you because I read a lot of them. I mean, not yours, but
you know what it was is that I was looking at things and it didn't feed my heart. It didn't feed my heart. And I didn't have a $150,000 job. I had just gotten married between the two of us. We had 3 kids and no money. It was not the time to leave. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want.
Well, and I think a lot of people, again, maybe it's almost process of elimination sometimes in life. Maybe they don't, but once you've been there, done that, once you cross one thing off the list.
That's really true. And I think that when I decided to leave, it wasn't because there was this massive breakdown, but it was more that my heart just couldn't do it anymore. And so what I did is, I always believe you go with your strengths. You go with what brung you. What brung you is my field of communication. Don't you love the word brung? And I'm a strong writer. I'm strong at analysis. So what I did is I started doing communication with companies where I would produce their annual reports. I wrote everything from ads to orange juice labels. As I began to try to figure out, okay, what is this thing that would feed my heart? It's not this, well, maybe this. And at the same time, working also with that amorphic thing called balance, because I also knew I wanted a life too.
Now, but I think we were talking last night and you said there is no such thing as balance?
That's right. That's right. I said, I have a line, balance is baloney.
Balance is baloney.
Balance is baloney.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, it's
hopeless.
It's not gonna,
that's it, people. Balance is baloney. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Well, all right, but here, let me ask you a question. On the count of 3, take your hands and show me what balance traditionally looks like. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Show me what balance looks like.
Balance? Is this?
There you go.
Juggling? I don't know.
Well, that's exactly it. Is that when we use the word balance, we think that it's equality. And if that's the picture I have in my head, the truth of the matter is I will always fail, because life is not equal. So that's why I think the word balance, if I could throw it out, I would, because we will very rarely achieve that. Instead, I think what balance has to do is more of to see as a metaphor, which, by the way, metaphors are powerful teachers. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a metaphor is worth 1,000 pictures. If you think of sailing, and if you're in a sailboat, imagine me in a sailboat. Now I got my hand over here on the tiller. I've got my other hand over here on the sheet. If it's a heavy piece of wind that's coming, I'm a little teeny one-person sailboat, little catboat. I've got my toe hooked under the gunnel. So theoretically, I'm at an angle, right? Water's coming in, water's going out.
I'm right there with you.
You're right. Now, from any vantage point, do I not look as if I'm out of balance?
Well, I thought you were going to go overboard or something. But,
The truth of the matter is, what lets me go forward is I know where I'm consciously connected to the most important parts of the boat. Let go of any one of those pieces, Shark City. So my notion of balance is not about equality. My notion of balance is how can I stay connected, translated into the time, into those things that are most essential for me for the phase that I am in my life. And that also includes is how do you find that, where do you move with that passion? Because it's not just enough to work, it's also what are the other pieces I want in my life.
And so you've been able to find that now. You do your consulting and
Well,
you write your books.
I write, have mouth will travel.
I'm glad to hear.
That's it. I lecture in leadership change and work-life integration. And actually that's one of the biggest issues now of our times.
You hear that from a lot of people, this kind of
everywhere, everywhere. And I get not annually, daily, I get press releases that come to me and news clippings from around the world in which so many of the world is saying, what is this thing called balance? I'm losing myself to my job. So there's really two things. One is how do I find the work that feeds me? And secondly, if I can't do that, how can I at least take wherever I am? And how do I live a life that is of my design rather than by default?
Well, so for that last one, I mean, those are both good points, but for the last one, let's say if you are, how do you take control? If you're in that situation and, you know, like I say, you're in the job that you're not crazy about, but there you are, and you wake up, you know, however you got there, there you are.
There you are.
How do you, what would
Well,
you tell
you know what,
somebody
there's actually multiple answers to that. First, up is not the only way. So sometimes you think, well, if I just go up, it'll be better.
Get a promotion? Or,
yeah, get a promotion. Maybe if I were in charge, it would be better. If you look at yourselves as being able to move both horizontally, being able to try on different pieces of jobs. So maybe you don't have to leave that one place, but maybe if I began to look at what is it that really feeds me that I love, maybe I can put a piece of that in here. I had a woman who was working for an architectural firm, and she really did not like the architectural firm, what she had to do. What she wanted to do was write. So what she ended up doing is she asked her boss, she said, you know, we ought to have a company newsletter. Would you let me work on that in addition to what I do? He said, well, that's a great idea. So what she did is she found a way to bring a gift into this place where she still had the job within the architectural firm, but now she was able to use her writing, and in this case it was to do this newsletter. So she found ways to bring it into the work.
And then maybe as a result, she'll be more valued or respected from
or
that.
valued or respected, or at some point in time, and you know, the research says we change jobs about every 7 years anyway.
Every 7 years. Is that what it is these days?
Yeah,
It's probably getting more frequent,
years.
isn't it, these days?
Yeah, well,
not like the old days where you worked for one company for 30 years.
No, those days are gone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. But at least every 7 years people change, or they move around. And probably even for a younger generation, if they're not happy, and they're not willing to, by the way, are not willing to rent themselves to their jobs to survive to the weekend. So if it's taking too much
do the
out.
young people, you were talking last night also about like instant gratification, do you think maybe young
Yeah.
people want it too easy or want too much too fast, that everything, you know, if it's not their dream job to begin with, I mean, you know, do you have to struggle a little or maybe work at something a little, you know?
I think from what I am picking up as I work within organizations, it's not so much that they want it so fast as they want to know, number one, that their opinion is valued. They don't just want to be a cog in a wheel, and if I'm going to do it, you better tell me why it's important in the scheme of things. Don't just give me busy work. Tell me something that's important and give me an opportunity to grow and develop my strengths. So I think it's those three things that, oh, by the way, I am going to have a life outside of this. And that's the thing, I think, if you look at a higher level, the higher level says, well, I didn't have a life. Why should you have a life? And now more organizations and people in them are saying, you know what, if we're going to keep you, if we're going to engage you, if we're going to get new people, we got to figure this thing out.
So a personal life in addition to your
That's
work
right.
life as well.
And it's not that they're separate. It's like a DNA helix. It comes together. Apart together, just like the DNA.
What do you think about, talk about, I guess, taking risks, but making a clean break for it? I mean, what if you wake up, now, I mean, you know, doing the newsletter and all that is great, and for some people that may be the answer and they get reconnected with their job, but what if you say, you know what, I really need to go off to the Himalayas? And you go off to the, what do you think of that? I mean, is that, you know, or really going for it and just going in a completely different direction, or,
you know what,
Here's
Here's the deal. I think each one of us has a responsibility to live a life that is operating from a place of integrity of who we are. And if there are times in which it's going to mean I have to walk out, I mean, I've done that twice. You know,
So
you hold your nose,
did.
hold up your head, and jump. You know, you're out of there. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but this is not it. And the only way I can find it is to leave. Now, if there are other people involved, you don't do that in a vacuum. It would
Meaning
not
a family.
a family.
Yeah.
And I got to talk. If you're my spouse, and I'm
Honey, I quit my job today.
I quit my job, and I didn't give you a heads up, and we didn't talk about it. Not fair.
And then, honey, we can get a divorce tomorrow. Probably the next thing, right?
Yeah, not fair.
We'll be right back. And we are back with Eileen McDargh and Delli today, talking about work-life balance and getting a life and having a life and all that. So we were talking about personal life. How do you fitting personal life into the work life and integrating them and all of that? Any thoughts?
Well, I agree with Eileen, what she was saying. I mean, I think that they're both connected, you know, because companies, businesses, or organizations are made up of people. So if people are happy with their lives, or if they're not happy, it's going to go into the work. So it's about being productivity, and it's, you know, if you really enjoy what you're doing, if you're getting respected and valued for your work, then you're going to see yourself more appreciated for what you're doing.
And do companies realize that? I mean, that they do. You're saying in effect they get better workers, or better, more productive workers, because if they have a life instead of just like little robots that are.
I would say yes and no. I think that we're kind of like we're coming into this. I hate to use the word new age because it has a whole different connotation to it. But we are coming into this age where we're going to see this huge decline in the work population because of the aging baby boomers, and they're going to have to get it, but they're slow to get it. But more and more organizations, I swear, are coming to me saying, help us figure out this whole work-life balance. So they're looking at things like flex time, job share, elder care. You know, how can we take some of the burden off of you so that you can craft a life? But the other piece, which is what you were talking about, Cos, is also let me find a place that will use what feeds me, what's my strength, my talent.
And if it means moving to a different profession or a career, that's what you need to do, and that's what you should be doing. But I've been doing this since 95 or 96 as a consultant. I've seen that companies are realizing that. More and more companies that I work with, they're realizing the value of creating a more, not to use the word balance, but more of a producing environment where people are appreciated for their work.
So how do you do that for a company when you go in, if they feel that there's some sort of issue that they're trying to address? How do you help them get there?
Well, it's either they know the issue, or they don't realize what the issue is. They may think that the issue is that the person is being unproductive, or it may be that they're being very productive, they just don't have the right controls in place to show, like, for example, having status reports and productivity. So my current client right now, I'm doing a lot of personal development workshops to bring out their best selves and what they're doing in life for themselves. Because again, if they're happy what they're doing, it's going to go into the work. So it really changes. Each client is different and how you approach it. My approach has always been with the process that I have in place, because it's very flexible and it can work with any client. Right now I'm doing some work with a domestic violence group in one of the communities. I'm doing trainer sessions. So I'm training the trainers that work with domestic violence clients. It's with them. It's about having.
That, by the way, must be a whole different thing, because people have serious
issues, and so I apply the same principles, and because of the fact that I observed that in my life growing up, so I could relate to that. So there's a sensitivity in place. So it's like. It's about being flexible. So my one client may have, is an alcoholic. So how do you deal with somebody who's an alcoholic? You have to treat it a little differently. But it's always about having a plan and executing on it, and helping them execute on it.
And I think what Cos is doing is that he's really looking at a systemic. And because in your background, like you talked about, you observed your mother and the abuse, you're bringing that in, so you're actually trying to help the individual heal from the inside
transform,
out. And for me, what I want to help them do is organizationally, how do we look at each individual becomes equipped with where is it that I am in my life, what's important to me, but then also to look, are there ways in which we're doing work that are non-productive?
Such as?
Meetings. So somebody feels stretched so thin, they're spending all their time in meetings that they shouldn't be in meetings.
It's so funny, I don't use that word meeting. You know what I use with my client? Working sessions.
Working sessions.
You have agendas, you have action items, you have status reports, and that way you can show progress, because people just have meetings, right? Just talk.
Most meetings are
nothing gets done, right?
So it's actually also looking about efficiency, so what you do at the end of the day has value rather than just silly stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we've all sat through the meetings that are
Yes, yeah.
silly stuff and not.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other things that you work with at an organizational type of level?
Well, one of the things that I'll do with the organizations is, if you think of it as having a ladder, and you can have some things that are set up through a human resource department, like flex time and job share and all that other stuff, but that's only one part of the ladder. The other part of the ladder is, how do we help individuals take responsibility for their lives? And that's a training issue. That's an awareness issue, and that's where Cost and I are both looking at. You can't have one piece without the other piece. So it's working on that, and then with the team saying, what are the things that we are doing that are consuming people that don't add value at the end of the day, and where are you right now in your life?
Sounds great. Thank you both for being
You're
here today,
welcome.
Eileen.
Thank you very much, Gregory.
Costs.
Thank you.
Eileen's book is McDargh is Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live, and Costs' book is The Way. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.